is Gwenno, and you can call me Gwen. And yes, that is a delightful Welsh accent that you can hear. I'm a Scrum Master for a company called Zappy, and I'm here to talk about whether or not Scrum Masters should be line managers for the development team. Initially, the role of Scrum Master was intended to be rotated between development team members. Over time, it's evolved to be its own standalone role. However, one thing that hasn't changed is the notion that a Scrum Master should manage the process a team follows and not the team itself. But that isn't always the case. Every Scrum Master I've had as a developer was my line manager. My first position as Scrum Master included being a line manager. Thankfully, that is not the case today, but I have had experiences on both sides of the argument. So what effect does being a line manager have on the Scrum Master role? Firstly, there is an unavoidable shift in dynamic. We're ingrained to mostly do what our manager tells us. Our manager says jump, we ask how high. This contradicts one of the most important duties of a Scrum Master, which is to gain the trust of the team, coaching them towards their own conclusions and process improvements. Not just take what I say as gospel because I'm the boss. For example, if your Scrum Master is your manager and they ask you, why didn't you complete your sprint? You're much more likely to apologize and say, oh, I'm going to work hard the next sprint, than challenge them and challenge the process. Then there's time. Being a line manager takes time. There are formal one-to-ones, appraisals, disciplines, approving timesheets, the list goes on. If you're doing all of this on top of Scrum Master duties, then something's got to give. And I'll say from experience that it's very likely to be the Scrum Master responsibilities that slip first. Thirdly, having Scrum Masters as line managers across an organization creates a vicious circle that's hard to break. When I made the jump from developer to Scrum Master, I was asked if I wanted to be a line manager. Truthfully, I didn't. But in a company where most, if not all, Scrum Masters are line managers, can you ever really have the full respect and be successful in your role if you're not their manager? Fourthly, if you're a pure Scrum Master, and what I mean by that is if you don't also work as part of the development team, are you really the best person to line manage developers? Whilst you no doubt interact with them daily and you'll definitely have your own opinions, if you're not regularly diving into their code on GitHub, are you really the most qualified person to run their appraisals, for example? So if not the Scrum Master, then who? An obvious fix for my previous point would be for lead developers to take on managerial responsibilities for more junior developers in their team. But as a big fan of Henry Stewart from Happy, I have to agree with him that managers should be chosen based on their ability to manage people and not, in fact, their seniority and ability in a certain role. With all that said and done, and I don't think many other options, should we just accept my previous point as sacrifices to a worthy cause and conclude that with a tendency to have stronger soft skills, Scrum Masters actually are the most likely candidates to make good managers? My answer, well, it depends. You could be the absolute best Scrum Master in the world, but you could also simultaneously be the absolute worst people manager. The two things don't necessarily go hand in hand. At the end of the day, there is nothing in the Scrum Guide that states a Scrum Master should be a good people manager. To conclude, I hope, I've made my thoughts clear, but it wouldn't be fair of me to not at least consider the benefits of a Scrum Master being a line manager. And honestly, at risk of being controversial, I fear the only benefit of having Scrum Masters as line managers is that it's an easy way to keep outdated corporate hierarchies alive and answer that question, who should approve timesheets? To echo Henry Stewart once again, maybe the solution here is to just abolish management. We don't have the notion of line managers in Zappy, and to be honest with you, it is fantastic. When I made the decision to leave my previous company, I applied for a bunch of different Scrum Master opportunities. Some were looking for a Scrum Master come line manager. Thankfully, most weren't. I was even asked the question, how do you feel about the fact that you'll be stepping down from a managerial position into a purely Scrum Master role? My response was then and would be now, I never wanted to be a line manager, I just want to be a Scrum Master. Thank you very much for your time.